In this video, we're going to assemble two pages. We're going to do our cover page, and that's what some of this is for, and then we're going to do one interior page with this text. So that will give us an idea for our zine of how to do one more stylistic page and then one more body copy style page. In addition to these printouts, I have just a stack of old printouts to use as cutting board. If you have one of those self-sealing mats, that's super useful. You could do this with a pair of scissors as well. I prefer, instead of scissors, an X-Acto knife, or more often I actually just use a razor because they're cheap, and I don't know, that works better for me. In addition to that, I have the calipers I was using last video. Have a few different kinds of Sharpies, just random Prismacolor, and realize that because I'm doing this in black and white, it actually doesn't matter if my marker is off color. So it doesn't matter if I'm using warm blacks and cool blacks, they're going to be the same, right? So like this sort of sepia, it doesn't matter if it's sepia because it's all going to get scanned in as black. Pencil. Then you can also use things like string, right? Like this could make a really interesting texture on a page. If you wanted to use it, you can also get more interesting strings than just this little bit of cotton twine. And then I'm going to use just standard Scotch tape to put all this together because I kind of like the aesthetic of the Scotch tape edges. You could also do the thing where you like roll the Scotch tape into double-sided tape, put it behind, and then stick it down, and that would work just fine as well. It's just not the aesthetic I'm going for. I actually also like the aesthetic of actually having staples go through. So you staple the top of the thing that you're putting on your page, and you get the little push back from the staple touching the glass, and then it pushes your paper back and adds a shadow. But it also gives you that nice little line. I also went downstairs and grabbed a ruler. So we now have a real ruler and a real straight edge. I was using just this little bit of card for my straight edge yesterday, which is great if you're using a marker, but for things that are sharp, I would suggest actually getting a real straight edge for it, and that'll work much better. So these are the additional tools that I have on top of just the printouts I had from yesterday. We're going to start with a single folded piece of paper, because remember, we're just doing these individual sides. We're not doing spreads because we don't quite know where those spreads are going to go, and that's one of the advantages of doing a mixed digital and physical process, is that we can move those pages around. If we need to add a page, if we need to do something else, we can move stuff to our liking. Be careful if you're just using bare blades like I do, it's not good for your skin. Here's our half page that we're going to start putting things onto. Right, we've decided that ours is going to be a half page. We've decided that I'm going to use 1/2-inch margins all the way around. In those printouts from yesterday, especially one like this where it prints black right to the edge, we can see how much of a margin there is here. And that margin, the unprintable margin, looks to be about 1/8 of an inch, about 3 millimeters, but it's different over here. See this? See how this margin here is different than this margin over here? This is why I back everything off so much, is because then I have just a white area around the edge, and I don't see the paper shifting versus the print plane. So I don't have to worry about that. I like big margins. Our half-size page, we have our fold is on this side. I'm going to do the cover first, and then we'll do that inside page. So here's our cover, and I could go ahead and mark in the 1/2 inches, but I don't really need to quite yet. Set this to the side, and then we're going to cut out some of our art. When we have art like this, we need to decide if we're going to use the background images or the background imagery or not. I don't think I'm going to, because it has this cutout. Right, if this was straight across, or if I had bothered to do this digitally and photoshopped in some more background there and removed the border, I probably could have done that. But I'm going to just take this out, and I'm probably going to leave in this shadow and then just kind of make the edge of the shadow more organic so it doesn't end on the print line, and then we'll be good to go. So now I have my little piece of art that I can freely move around the place. I might want to actually go in right here and make this have a little negative space to it, just so it doesn't look quite so much like a round edged shadow. So yeah, just that little cut in there took care of that looking unnatural, and now this moving around on this page looks just fine. One thing you may have noticed is my knife really didn't change direction at all. Like I wasn't doing this number the whole time. I was keeping my knife very stable, and I was moving the page around underneath it. And that's just my preference. I think some people can do it both ways, but I think the easier thing to do is to move your art and keep your cutting hand the same. One thing you also noticed is at no point did my knife go in a place where I could come across my other finger. Right? My hand was always up here, and we were working this way. So if I pulled real hard, it would come out and away from these fingers, so I don't cut myself. This is an unrelated injury. So I now have this piece of art. It's very nice. I'm going to set it to the side. And then this is where I can start showing you guys some things of like, if we do this, we can just put this down. Looks nice. Looks like a great little piece of art. But what if I'm just going to take out a flash drive, put it underneath, did it like this, and photographed it like that. Well, now I have this nice drop shadow. And of course the light in this room is coming this way, as you can see. It's coming from like an angle in that direction. So I would, if I wanted to photograph it correctly, it would be like that. So the drop shadow goes down compared to the object. But that's just the lighting in the room. And of course, if you were going to photograph this as opposed to using a scanner or a copier, then you would want to be very cautious about how your light is coming down and hitting it. I plan on using a scanner, so I'm not going to do any three-dimensional effects. We're just going to do it in 2 dimensions. So there's our cute little tank. This, I think, is an FT-17. I'm not sure. It's a French tank from World War I, World War II. Let's see, what other art do I need? Aha. So we have this. So I'm going to take one of these little symbols, I think. I don't think I'm going to need more than one of each. So I'm just going to cut those. And the way I'm going to do them is the same I did the tank, of giving it a little bit of white space. So I think it's important to notice this. Let me put it against this. You can see that there's a tiny bit of white space. I didn't cut right up to the black almost anywhere. And I also really didn't give it too much attention, right? This is supposed to be kind of grungy. This is supposed to be kind of zine-y. It's fine if it's grungy. That is okay. Now this little one, probably not. I could probably cut that by hand. But this big one, I'd probably want to get a straight edge and put it right up against it, and then cut it. So let me go ahead and do that. So I have those 2 nice little pieces of art ready to go. And now I'm going to cut this out. And now I kind of do need to make some decisions on what I want this to look like. I think I'm going to give myself a little bit of a border around this to give myself some white space around the word tank. So I think I'm going to go out about 1/8 of an inch. So you may have noticed that I made these 2 marks on top, 2 marks on bottom in a straight line, but then I made a mark here and then one down next to the T, and the same on the K. I actually came in on the K, and I think that's because I do want to cut it to shape. And actually I failed a little bit in that this right here needs to have a mark out like that, because I need to know, oops, sorry, mark out like that because that's where that T is going to come in. Don't throw away little straight pieces like this, because they can be useful for stripes and headers and stuff like that. So now what I'm going to do is, before I make the decision to, do interesting edges, I'm just going to cut it straight and see what it looks like. Kind of like it straight. I don't like the extra white space here, so I do think I am going to cut it in. And if I had letters where it was like an H instead of a T at the beginning, it might work better, because then the negative space would be even. But as you can see right now, my negative space over here is bigger than on this side, and it's also a different shape. So, and also this is a measure twice, cut once sort of place. So look at it after you make your cut and see, is that good enough? No, now we have too much white on this side. So let's go ahead and clean this up. I also like cutting towards the art just so I can see how much of a line I have. It does, so here's the thing with cutting this way, is that cutting this way allows you to see the gap you have and line it up by eye if you want to. So like that's lined up. But it does mean that if you slip with your razor, you can cut into your art. So that's something to consider, is that it does give you the option, but you might cut into your art and that might not be as good. So it's what you're comfortable with, I think, is the important thing here. One nice thing about using those like self-sealing cutting mats is usually they're like a forest green color, and that green color makes it really easy to see paper against it, right? We're doing paper on paper, and it makes it hard to see when it's fully flat. So let's see if that looks good. Yeah, I kind of like that. I even kind of like the fact that I backed this off a little here and have a straight section. It just is a little bit janky in a way that I like. You could do things like coming in here and cutting, but I don't think it would add enough to be worth the effort, and the chances of messing up my cut are pretty high, so I'm not going to do that. So I have this piece of art, I have this. I can look through the rest of my art and see if there's anything else. Like at some point I might actually go through and cut out some of these trees and things because they're just such neat little pieces of art. This weird one in the back, take that. Also, you have all this nice text down here at the bottom. Of course, it's all in French and strange words, but that's fine. But something like this little combat word might be useful for what I'm doing. Or type might be useful. Let's see, do I want to do anything with this one? Right, I know I don't want to use this German text. It's too weird, and it's one big issue with this kind of text is that it's very hard to cut out individual letters and then reset them into words that you actually know. So oftentimes it's just like not the right thing. Yeah, I just don't think this is going to do what we need to do for this piece of work, so I'm going to leave this one out for right now. And remember, we're not using our text because we're not doing that page right now. So my cutting board, I'm going to move to the side. Now I have my page, I have, my fold on this side. You could also cut this because we're doing individual page layouts. And then really quickly, I'm going to go through and just mark those 1/2 inches. Oh, but we're not 1/2 inch, are we? This side is going to be different because we decided everything was going to move over, so in case I needed punch holes, it wasn't going to look weird. So here's our notes from last video. There we go. There's our notes. So now I can see that that actually wants to be 3/4 of an inch. Again, I'm going to use a pencil in case I need to erase. But the idea is if we make the mark light enough, we won't actually see it, and then we don't have to erase it. So less work for us and more attractive overall. You could also mark these lines hard and give yourself a border if you wanted to. Some people like that sort of look, and I think on zines that bordered look can oftentimes look very good. Alright, I've got a few marks around the edge. They're pretty inconspicuous. They're definitely in the realm of erasable. So now we can start playing. Start looking what this is going to be. Now I can see that this actually overruns my lines, right? I've made this too big for what I'm doing here. That's okay though, because this is my cover page, right? I'm not doing this as text, I'm doing this as my cover. So this actually works pretty well as a word on a cover. So maybe I want that little earmark in the corner. Strange little cat creature. Oh, but I'd made text that I didn't cut out. I forgot this text right here, right? So let's go ahead and cut that out. Now I can look and see if I want this as a single line. Maybe not. I'm going to go ahead and cut that, and if I need to put it back on one line, that's easy enough as just, taping it up as one piece. So I'm going to cut that. Those look pretty good. I'm a little close on this side. I would have rather have had a little bit more space, so if I was doing this like super perfectly, I'd go reprint this, but I think it looks okay. I am going to trim the extra off the side of this guy. So it'd be something like that. It's completely acceptable thing right there, right? I need to add the BYO, right? We're going to have to figure out how to do that. But this, completely acceptable zine style thing. Now, it's fine. It's not interesting, it's fine. So let's see what we can do. Now, problem. And this is one of those problems that's just a common thing in typography. Don't ever hide the top of your text. It makes it really hard to read. If you're going to hide part of your text, hide the bottom. Because even that is actually still pretty legible, right? That N is a little obscured, but that's pretty legible compared to the other way around. And if we use the same side, right, that's pretty much completely legible. So don't hide the top edge if you can avoid it. It just doesn't really work out great. This is also when we can decide that maybe we want a little bit more on the stylish edges. Right, so maybe I want to take my crumply paper. Now that is a pretty stylish object with the only difference, right, is just using a textured background, a pre-copied textured background. And we could do whatever we want with that. If I found a pattern, if I did something else, if I just put sand on there and then scan the bottom of the sand, you can get some really interesting textures very easily. And I want you to notice that like these vertical lines that are just like errors in the scan, you don't really notice them once there's other stuff on the page. This also gives some pop to the edge where we're using this white border here. It gives us a little bit of push off the page. Same thing with the whites in this image, right? This white now pops a little because we're using a more neutral background. We can also use, there's no design on that, but it would give us a nice medium gray. So if I wanted to put this here, I could do that. We wouldn't get the blue, but we would get kind of a nice medium gray, and that might give us a sort of an interesting design. It's completely accidental that it fits that word so well. But we could also do it maybe like that. Or if I wanted to, I could actually give us a horizon line. You could do something like that where you're actually giving yourself a split on the document. And you would even get this little line, which might be very attractive. And if it's not attractive to you, then just cut a bigger piece of paper, and that would work just fine as well. So you can do these kind of stylish things. And if you look, you're going to get kind of a feeling in some of these cases of like late 80s, early 90s. And that's because that's when a lot of this sort of style of thing was used. And you're going to, be replicating that. And that's totally fine. And this is also an option where you don't really need your name on the first page. You could totally put that on the inside of the document. I like having the CC by non-commercial on there simply because that indicates that somebody is claiming ownership of this. But it doesn't need to be there. This can totally be on the inside page. It's just that when you put something online, it's oftentimes going to be the first page only. So I like having that little thing in the corner. Now, it can be in the corner, right? Like you can put it in at an angle like that and make it even less conspicuous. Remember, because it's text, we want to come in a good amount because we don't want to get cut off on this scanner, copier, printer edge. So now, how on earth are we going to do our BYO? I actually don't know. So let's try a few things. That's kind of interesting. I've got a little bit more texture, right? This is actually, interestingly enough, picked up the texture of this table. You can see the lines in it this way. So let's see if we can actually use that to our advantage. So now we don't really need to worry about this because we kind of know that we like this. This looks nice. We know that the little CC BY thing looks nice. So let's just work on our title. Now with this covering up here, I might actually want to go in and be more aggressive and come right to the edges, but that means I'm going to have to come right to the edges all the way around. So let's keep laying this out and kind of see where we are. Now I think that actually looks pretty good. I do think I want to come in here and clean up this, and I'm probably going to do the same thing here as well. I don't think I'm going to do the top because I like how this gray area terminates across here. I like that sharp, and I like this little bit of like tiny negative space right here on the side of the T. I think that works well. Now you'll notice that I cut this to match the bottom of this. This is a square thing, so it shouldn't really have a round cut around it. So I squared up that, and I actually lined up the white with the bottom of the two pen strokes. Now that's kind of interesting, of having the B and the O tuck behind and the Y come over the top. Right? That gives us kind of some 3D stuff going on with this without actually having to do it. So let's try it the other way. I think I like that as much. I think I like the Y being the one to poke out. So I really pretty much like this cover. I think it's good. It's a good start. If I wanted to redo it, obviously very, very simple to redo it. But I'm going to go ahead and start taping some of these things down. So I kind of know where everything is. The most important thing is going to be this assembly up here, so I pull this to the side. Now this is a choice of when you do your Scotch tape, do you do little pieces, do you do big pieces, do you do corner tapes? I'm personally a big fan of corner tapes, because I think that when you do see the corner tapes, they look good. You can at this point also, especially if you're a drawing student and you have them, take a little bit of charcoal on your fingers, like get just a little bit of the dust out of the box, and just touch the like sawn edge of the tape, and you get a little bit of nice contrast on the edge of those tape marks, so you can get a much stronger visual impression. And you don't need to tape every corner. Like I could just do those three, and because that'll hold it down, and that'll be just fine. So let's see, the next two pieces are going to be these two. There's also little oopsies, like see this cut didn't cut quite right on this piece of tape. I leave that stuff intact. I think that looks pretty nice. And then just one egregiously right in the middle. Right? It's my design. Egregious right in the middle. I like that. And you can use the back of your nail to kind of, massage these down if you want to. I do not like this hanging off. It bothers me. There we go. All better. So, that looks pretty good. I have my little kitty. He's got to go right here. So what I'm going to do for the cat is I'm actually going to make a laminated piece. So what I'm going to do for the cat is that. Sorry, I'm going to put it off screen for a second. So this is a laminated taping. of where you put enough tape on it to cover the entire object and get some edges on it. And what that's going to do is that's going to look a lot more like a stamp, or like, it's going to give it a little bit more physicality. So there are some interesting things that you can do with the tape, especially once you start figuring out how to darken up the tape, how to add dirt to it, how to add all these other things. You can get really interesting textures going on with it. Okay, so we have the top bit of our design done. Actually, I kind of like that, of lining this up on this edge right here. I like that a lot. So I'm going to do another laminated tape. It doesn't even have to be even if you don't want it to be. It can be at a janky angle, and that's totally fine. Just realize with all these janky angles that you're not going to be able to, right? Like that is not even. The piece of tape is not even on the piece of paper. So you're going to have to be cautious on laying this out. Oh, and I actually want to do this the other way because the alignment I want to do is actually this outside edge. Put that like that. And now with this seam here, I'm going to get a nice dark seam there. Right? I'm going to get probably 1 or 2 pixel line of a dark seam between those two objects. Alright, where does Mr. FT17 go? Or Miss FT17? I think that looks pretty solid right there. And then this one, more to just show you guys how to do it. Take a little piece of Scotch tape, fold that over, put it on the back. I'm a big fan of 2. And now the one problem with that back stuff is you got to really get this aligned. And if you notice, I keep turning this sideways to get stuff aligned. And that's just because in my mind, that just makes it a little bit easier to line up a horizontal thing. For some reason, it's much easier for me to get vertical stuff. Oh, no, come off. Don't stick, come back. A little bit of overlap. And at some point, you just kind of have to squish it down and just hope for the best. Alright, there we go. I like that. Now this is where if I was a very brave person, you could also write your name out at the bottom, right? Just like I did this, but you could just write it right on this page. But because I'm not a brave person, we can try it, right? So I can try a... So I think I'd like that. And this is also a thing of don't throw out all that scrap paper, because sometimes you just need to, try little cartoons, do little things, add to stuff. You can also do things of rewriting on this. So I could come in and outline this. I could take a permanent marker and just outline this if I wanted to. You can add all sorts of stuff to it. And as you kind of decide on like what your style is going to be, you can keep adding and adding and adding and get these really interesting textures to things. So I am going to put that right there. I'm going to bring it up a little bit, I think. Or do I put it over here? Or does it go up here? That is honestly my favorite so far. So you know what? I'm not going to do a big thing of tape. I'm just going to hold it. This side. Some tape right there in the middle, right? Because I like the over-taped look. But again, I could have just done it from the back. That would have been fine, just like I did this FT17. It works just fine. So I think that's a pretty good and interesting cover. There's also things where, like, see this black down here? If I think this black is too aggressive, see my thumb? You're actually seeing a little bit of... Oh, can't quite see it. It's out of focus. See that bit of black? I actually scratched that off. So watch this dark area here in the center. You can scratch that and actually get rid of some of the toner. So that's another option, is you can actually aggressively mess with the paper if you want to. Right? You could actually scratch little lines in like this if you wanted to. course, now I messed up my page, but that's okay. So to make that look purposeful, I'm going to throw in another set of 3 lines over here. And all I'm doing is scraping the top of the paper to get rid of the toner. So I have kind of an interesting texture going on that top edge. Kind of an accident. Now what I'm going to do is scan this, and we'll show you the scanned copy. So again, here's our original, and here is our scan. Now see how just by turning it black and white and just by adding this nasty texture of the print, even just, you know, taking the blue and making it that gray color, just all those little subtle things just really help to tie this stuff together. And that's one reason I would really suggest when you're working on this project, just stick with black and white. It makes a really interesting thing, and it challenges us to work with only, you know, black and white. We can't use color to take over for us. You can also see that little edge of the tape there that came out in the scan? Same thing. This area looks a little bit more faded than, say, up here, and that's where the tape was over the top. We can see the edge of where the tape protected this. You can actually see that it whited out some of this, right? It didn't pick up some of this. And you can change your copier to go brighter or darker depending on what you want. And as I'm playing with this, I could actually send this back through the scanner if I wanted an even more aggressively abused looking piece of art, but I think that this actually works for us really, really well. So we can see that this works. This is nice. Probably don't need to change it all that much. I do like the fade on each end. I think that that's really working out for us. And the vertical errors in the, and those aren't even in the copier. Those are in the toner reel. And because of that, we get these interesting things that kind of make the art feel like it's one big piece. It's kind of like when people add film grain sometimes to video to make it all tie together. So here's our cover. That's a really good start. Then we're going to take a short break, and we will be back to do our interior in another video.